Sometimes the silence between you and this person feels too strange to ignore, too heavy, too alive, almost like something is being said without sound. And if you clicked on this, there is probably a reason for that. Somewhere deep inside, you have been feeling something unusual, a pull, a pressure, a quiet emotional signal that does not fully go away. It can feel like this person has been trying to reach you without speaking, trying to touch your heart without using words. And what you are about to hear may explain why. There are 3 messages hidden inside this connection, 3 truths this person may never say clearly to your face, and the second one may change how you see everything between you. The first message is simple but strong. They think about you much more than you realize, not once in a while, not in some casual passing way, much deeper than they admit, even to themselves. Part of you may doubt that. You may think, if that were true, then why are they so distant? Why are they quiet? Why do they not come forward? But that question reveals something important. Many people believe that deep feelings always create movement, that if someone cares, they will naturally come closer. But people are rarely that simple. Sometimes strong emotion creates approach, and sometimes it creates retreat. Stay with me because this is where the real meaning starts to show. When someone feels emotionally overwhelmed by a connection they cannot fully control, distance becomes a defense. They step back not because nothing is there, but because too much is there. They become quieter not because they stopped caring, but because caring started to feel heavy. It started to feel risky. Risky to their emotional balance, risky to the identity they built, risky to the walls they spent years creating. And if this person carries old pain around trust, rejection, abandonment, or emotional dependence, then your presence may wake all of that up at once. So their silence may not be empty at all, it may be overload. There are people who express love easily, and there are people whose whole system reads closeness as danger. They feel attachment and fear in the same breath. They want connection, but at the same time they want to run. That contradiction can confuse the person on the other side, especially someone like you, someone sensitive enough to feel that there is more beneath the surface. And this is where things get even more intense. You are not imagining it. You are not being dramatic. You are not creating meaning out of nothing. If you keep feeling their presence in your quiet moments, if memories rise without warning, if something unfinished keeps pulling at your heart, there may be a real reason for that. What is unspoken can become louder than words, and sometimes silence carries more truth than a full conversation. Maybe you think of them out of nowhere. Maybe you feel them late at night. Maybe their energy enters your mind right when you were trying not to think about them at all, and you ask yourself, why now? But maybe the deeper question is this: what is happening inside them that keeps pulling your awareness back? Emotional bonds do not always disappear just because contact stops. Sometimes silence does not erase connection. Sometimes it protects the intensity of it. This takes us deeper into the first message. They may be carrying a private battle you cannot see. On the outside, they may look calm, distant, maybe even uninterested. But inside, they may be replaying your moments far more than you know. Certain words may still echo in them. Certain looks, certain pauses, certain memories may still feel alive. Something about you may have touched a part of them they had hidden for years, and that is exactly what scared them. Real connection is not only comforting, it is exposing. It brings unresolved pain to the surface. It shows people the parts of themselves they were trying not to face. If you are someone who naturally sees emotional truth, then this person may have felt seen by you in a way they were not ready for. That can create relief and panic at the same time. Relief because someone finally understands them without the mask. Panic because the mask stops working. And here is the deeper layer. They miss you. Maybe not in some obvious dramatic way, but in quiet, restless, distracting ways that stay with them longer than they expected.
Missing someone does not always look like tears or messages.
Sometimes it looks like irritation, distraction, emptiness, a strange tension they cannot explain. They may stay busy on purpose because stillness brings you back into their mind. They may bury themselves in work, routines, noise, other people, anything that keeps them from sitting too long with what they really feel. But something still feels unfinished inside them. And here is the hard part. The more they miss you, the more they may resist the feeling, because missing someone creates vulnerability, and vulnerability threatens their sense of control. So instead of moving closer, they may become more distant, more quiet, more confusing. From your side, that inconsistency can hurt deeply, because unclear love often weighs more than no love at all. A clear ending hurts, yes, but uncertainty can live in the mind for a very long time, especially when your intuition keeps saying there is more underneath the silence.
Now we move into the second message,
And this is the one that may truly shock you. If the first message is about hidden longing, then the second is about the force behind their behavior. The second message is this: they are afraid of how much power you have over their emotional world. Not power in a controlling sense, something deeper. Your presence affects them in ways they cannot easily regulate. Your absence changes their inner state. Your words stay in their mind longer than they want. Your energy disturbs the emotional order they tried so hard to keep. And for someone who built their identity on independence, distance, and control, that can feel overwhelming.
They may start checking their phone more than usual.
They may feel hope and disappointment more strongly than they want to admit. They may sense themselves becoming emotionally attached in ways they never planned for. And if they spent years avoiding surrender, then you may represent the very thing they fear most: being moved, being changed, being emotionally touched in a way they cannot control. That can create frustration inside them, not always toward you, but toward themselves. Because their feelings challenge the version of stability they worked so hard to build. This is why their behavior may seem mixed. One moment they are open, the next they pull away. One moment there is warmth, the next there is silence. It feels confusing because you expect behavior to match emotion, but for conflicted people, behavior often reflects defense, not truth. Defense says, pull back. Truth says, stay. And inside them, those two voices may be fighting all the time.
One part says they do not need you.
Another part quietly knows they already do. That inner fight becomes exhausting. The more they try to push away what they really feel, the stronger it can grow in the background. Distance does not always break a bond. Sometimes resistance feeds it. And there may be something else happening too, something you may have already sensed. They may be testing the connection without fully knowing they are doing it, not always on purpose, often out of fear. Fear of abandonment, yes, but also fear of getting too close.
So they create space and then watch what happens.
Will you chase? Will you leave? Will you prove yourself again? Will you stay available even when they become distant? On the outside, it can look cold, detached, even unfair, but underneath, it is often shaped by wounds that existed long before you arrived. That does not excuse harmful behavior, but it does explain the pattern. And maybe something in you has changed recently. Maybe you got quieter. Maybe you stopped chasing. Maybe you pulled your energy back. Maybe, for the first time, you started protecting your own peace. If that happened, then something likely shifted inside them too, because now your emotional availability is no longer guaranteed. Now they feel uncertainty. Now they feel the absence. Now they are standing in the same emotional space you may have lived in for a long time. This can feel like a shock in the connection. Sometimes, the moment you stop reaching is the moment they finally feel the distance.
Because when someone is always there,
the other person can delay responsibility. They can stay passive. They can avoid giving clarity. But when your energy changes, everything changes. Fear rises, regret starts growing, urgency appears. They may begin asking themselves if you are done, if you are moving on, if they lost something real, if they missed their chance. And beneath all of that sits an even deeper fear. Not just the fear of losing you, the fear of what would happen if they fully allowed themselves to love you. Because real love changes people. It weakens defenses. It asks for honesty. It asks for surrender. And surrender can terrify the ego.
That is why some people pull away right when things start becoming real. Not because love is weak, but because it is strong enough to shake the identity they built for protection. This person may be standing in that exact inner space right now. One part of them wants to move toward you. Another part wants to disappear. One part wants to tell you everything. Another part wants to hide it all and act untouched. But something deeper is happening now, and this is where the inner story begins to change. What they have been trying to ignore is becoming harder to bury. When emotions are pushed down for too long, the mind eventually gets tired of carrying the weight. The body starts reacting. The heart keeps returning to the same truth. What they avoided begins to rise again. What they denied begins asking for attention. And this is where the next realization starts to form. They can no longer fully convince themselves that this connection meant nothing. For a long time, they may have tried to explain it away. They may have called it attraction, timing, loneliness, curiosity, habit, anything except what it truly felt like. Because naming something makes it real, and once it becomes real, it asks for courage. It asks for responsibility. It asks for a choice. That is where many people struggle the most, especially those who learned early that openness leads to pain. Some people build their whole survival around distance and control, so when deep feelings arrive, it can feel like too much. They did not expect you to remain this alive in their inner world. They did not expect your emotional presence to stay after silence, after time, after all the distance. They may have thought space would weaken it. They may have believed time would make everything fade. But instead, your absence may be doing the opposite. It may be creating discomfort instead of relief. At first, distance probably felt easier for them. It gave them room. It gave them the illusion of control. They may have hoped distraction would solve everything, that if they stayed busy long enough, the emotional intensity would die down on its own. But instead of getting lighter, it may have grown heavier. Instead of feeling free, they may feel a quiet emptiness. That changes everything, because denial only works while someone believes avoidance will solve the problem. Once avoidance stops working, truth becomes much harder to escape. And now they may notice you in the smallest moments, quiet evenings, short breaks in the day, those in-between seconds when the noise drops and thoughts return. They may replay old talks. They may remember details they thought they forgot. They may wonder how you feel now. They may wonder if you still think about them. They may wonder whether they still matter to you at all. And here is something very important. People often realize the value of someone not while that person is constantly giving love, but when that presence is no longer guaranteed. Not because love is a game, but because absence removes numbness. It reveals what was there all along. When warmth is always available, people can take it for granted without meaning to. But when that warmth shifts, they finally feel what it was doing for them. They begin to understand the place that person held in their emotional life, and now they may be seeing the truth they once avoided. Your presence mattered more than they admitted. Even with that realization, hesitation may still remain, because feeling the truth is not the same as being ready to act on it. Understanding emotion is one thing. Following it takes courage. And this is often the hardest stage. One part of them is tired of holding everything inside. Another part is still afraid of rejection, exposure, shame, or regret. One voice says, "Reach out and stop hiding." Another says, "Stay guarded and avoid the risk." And if guilt is involved,
If they know their silence caused pain, then the conflict becomes even heavier. Then another fear appears. What if it is already too late? What if you are tired now? What if trust has been damaged? What if the distance created something that cannot easily be repaired? Regret often grows quietly. It does not always arrive with loud drama. Sometimes it shows up as a weight in the chest, a restlessness at night, a repeating thought they cannot shake, a deep awareness that something meaningful may have been lost because fear kept them frozen. People can survive heartbreak. What is often harder to survive is knowing they stepped away from something real because they were too afraid to face it. And when emotional masks become too exhausting to maintain, something starts to break open inside. Pretending stops working. Avoidance stops bringing relief. Acting unaffected becomes more tiring than telling the truth. That does not mean everything changes overnight, but it does mean movement is happening. Something is softening, something is shifting. And if you have been feeling strange waves of emotion lately, sudden intuition, or an unusual inner pull, it may not be random. Sometimes change begins inside the connection before any outer action appears. What comes next matters, so stay with this. Feelings often move first, behavior follows later. Inner change begins quietly, long before words arrive. That is why emotionally sensitive people sometimes notice a shift before they have any proof at all. They feel restlessness, they have vivid dreams, sudden thoughts show up without an obvious trigger. A person keeps returning to the mind again and again for no clear reason. That does not mean you should ignore reality. It does not mean you should stop thinking clearly. Actions still matter. Real life still matters. But it does mean that some connections begin moving beneath the surface before anything becomes visible on the outside. And there is something else you need to hear very clearly. This is not only about what they feel, it is also about you. Because while it is natural to focus on their silence, their confusion, their inner conflict, you must not lose yourself inside their emotional world. Their fear is not yours to carry. Their confusion is not yours to solve. Their growth is not something that should cost you your peace. Love was never meant to make you disappear inside someone else's struggle. It should not erase your identity. It should not force you to shrink just to keep someone close. If a connection keeps asking you to abandon yourself, then that pattern needs attention, not more sacrifice. This may be one of the deepest lessons in all of this. Not just learning how deeply you can feel, but learning how to stay connected to yourself while you feel it. That balance matters a lot. And many people confuse waiting with love. They think silent suffering proves loyalty. They think carrying confusion without complaint means they care more. But real love is not measured by how much pain you can survive. Healthy love does not ask you to stay anxious all the time. It does not ask you to live in constant guessing, overthinking, or emotional exhaustion. Real love may challenge you, yes. It may bring your wounds to the surface. It may ask you to grow. But it should not keep you lost without direction. Sometimes this kind of connection reveals as much about you as it does about the other person. It can show you where your attachment becomes too heavy. It can show you where fear of loss begins making choices for you. It can reveal where you keep giving more than you receive, even when it hurts. And if this connection has done that, then it still carries meaning, no matter how it ends. Because not every connection is here only to stay. Some come to wake something up inside you. Some come to show you what still needs healing. Some come to help you see yourself more clearly. In that process, something valuable begins to grow. Boundaries, clarity, emotional maturity. You start seeing the difference between what is real and what is only hope. You begin learning where your energy belongs and where it does not. And that is not about becoming cold. It is not about pretending you do not care. It is about staying open without becoming lost. The strongest place you can reach is not obsession. It is not chasing. It is not living in endless uncertainty. It is being able to say, I know what I feel. I know this matters to me, but I will not abandon myself for it. That inner position changes everything. You stop reading hidden meaning into every tiny detail. You stop carrying the emotional weight of both people. You become capable of love without becoming emotionally dependent. And when your energy becomes steady, the whole dynamic begins to change. The confusion loses some of its grip. Patterns that depended on your uncertainty lose power. Now the situation becomes clear in a different way. Either the other person steps forward with honesty, or they remain inside their hesitation. But that choice no longer destroys your peace. It belongs to them, not you. This brings everything back to what you may have sensed from the start. Yes, there may have been something real here. Yes, the feelings may have been deeper than the silence suggested. Yes, something meaningful may have been activated in both of you. But even if all of that is true, the most important truth is still this. You do not need to force what is real. You do not need to chase what can meet you halfway. You do not need to reduce yourself just to keep someone emotionally close. If this connection is meant to become something real, then clarity will eventually be required. Not mixed signals, not endless distance, not silence that stretches on forever. Real connection asks for courage from both sides. It asks for honesty. It asks for action, not just feeling. Because silence cannot hold a connection forever without consequences. At some point, silence becomes a choice. At some point, confusion becomes a pattern. And at some point, something must change if it is ever going to become real. And if nothing changes, that answer matters too. Because clarity, even when painful, is still healthier than long confusion. Confusion traps you. Clarity moves you forward. So if you needed reassurance, let this be enough. What you felt was not meaningless, but what you need matters too. The kind of love that fits your life is not supposed to keep you in a constant storm. It is not supposed to make you question your worth every day. It is not supposed to leave you forever waiting in emotional fog. Real love supports your peace. It gives room to breathe. It does not leave you chasing breadcrumbs while calling that devotion. So maybe the better question is no longer only, what do they feel? Maybe the deeper question is, what do you need in order to feel safe, respected, and clear? What kind of connection allows your heart to stay open without losing itself? What kind of love feels steady instead of confusing? The moment you start living from those questions, something changes inside you. Your focus moves from guessing to knowing, from waiting to awareness, from fear to self-respect. And maybe that is the real purpose of this whole experience. Not only to understand their silence, but to understand your value inside it. Because no matter what happens next, you still deserve honesty. You still deserve emotional stability. You still deserve a love that does not hide forever. And if this person is truly meant to be in your life in a real and meaningful way, then truth will eventually have to rise above fear. It cannot stay buried forever. At some point, something gives. At some point, honesty becomes necessary. Until then, protect your peace. Trust what you felt, but do not live on feeling alone. Let actions matter. Let clarity matter. Let your own heart matter too. And if this reached you at the exact right moment, then maybe that was not by accident. Maybe this was the reminder you needed today.